Hi there, and welcome to Wits News, where we ask ourselves, what is this shit? I'm your host, Ole. Now let's get into some shit news. On the menu today, World Economic Forum. I think I wore my funeral shirt today. Well, I guess that's fitting for these motherfuckers. Anyways, on the menu today, we got the World Economic Forum. We got a couple new clips from 2024, a couple old clips, a couple clips of Trump, a couple clips of Argentina's freedom fighting president. They call him the Trump of the South, but he's got a pretty good long speech he gave at the W.E.F. this year, 2024, and it's worth hearing. Javier Milei. I don't know exactly how to say it, but sounds like a real good guy here. Look at this. Argentina has implemented single day voting, paper ballots, and photo ID requirements. That's this man right here, newly elected guy in Argentina. This guy right here.
Plantar las ideas de la libertad en un foro que está contaminado de la agenda socialista 2030 y que lo único que va a traer es miseria al mundo. Que la libertad es la llave de la prosperidad. Seguir hablando y dejándole bien claro de la convicción que tenemos de este cambio de rumbo que ha marcado el nuevo gobierno.
They call him the Trump of the South. So let's get into the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and that way kind of understand what they're about and what their goals are, and if you feel like you align with them or the people who are standing up against them, the freedom fighters. And this here is posted by Restitutor Orbis. This is from the WEF 2017. You can find it all over the internet if you want to look it up. 8 predictions for the world 2030. In other words, the New World Order agenda, the new agenda, the Great Reset, all that good stuff. You'll own nothing and be happy. Whatever you want, you'll rent, and it'll be delivered by drone. You'll never have to leave. The US won't be the world's leading superpower anymore, and a handful of countries will dominate. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. We won't transplant organs, instead we'll print them. You'll eat much less meat. An occasional treat, not a staple, for the good of the environment and our health. So you'll only eat meat on occasions. That's got to be real good for your omnivorous brain. 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. You'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. There will be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuels history. Oh, so you're gonna charge everybody so damn much that nobody can afford it anymore. I bet people's bank accounts will be history first. You could be preparing to go to Mars. Scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space. Oh, just what I've always wanted. The start of a journey to find alien life, maybe? Fucking care about that shit. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. Oh, so the history. So Western values will be history. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. What? Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. Checks and balances. Like, comment, share, WF.C. It's the World Economic Forum. Well, let's look at a couple more samples from the good old WEF. I don't know who this guy is, but this is pretty interesting here. Posted by Leah Alpern.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
I fucking bet you are. Does that come with a chip? Oh, there goes the conspiracy theories. Let's find another clip. So here we got Klaus Schwab, dude's famous. You ever hear people talking about, oh, they just want everybody to be eating bugs and all that? Well, yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with that. I don't know who this guy he's talking to is, but
The technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore, because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
so whoever controls the algorithms will already know what everybody wants, and that's who will be elected. AI will elect your next president. Why should you think about it? Let a computer do it. Sounds like some Terminator shit, man. Is this how they took over? Don't let the people vote anymore. And then here's all Klaus Schwab, 2024. Is he up to his same old dirty tricks? Trying to ask everybody to trust him. Let's give a little listen to see what he's got to say this year.
Madam President, dear constituents of the World Economic Forum, dear friends. Today we stand really at a unique juncture in human history, facing challenges that are as diverse as they are profound. The special role of the World Economic Forum is not to look just at one single issue. It is a place where at the beginning of the year, we come together to analyze the state of the world in a systemic and strategic way, and hopefully to find common ground to generate positive impact. Geopolitically, our world, as my friend and colleague said, Børge Brende, geopolitically, our world is more interconnected, yet paradoxically, more divided and fragmented than ever. Economically, we grapple with sluggish growth. The very fabric of our societies is inclusiveness, which is in doubt. Environmentally, we confront the relentless challenges of climate change, a threat to our planet's delicate balance. And technologically, we navigate uncharted waters where innovation offers boundless opportunities, but also unprecedented risks. So steeply transformative challenges, which are actually the cornerstone of our program, lead to uncertainty, generalized fear, and pessimism. They force us into a mode of short-term crisis management at the detriment of long-term strategic and sustainable solutions. This reactionary approach undermines our collective faith in the future. At the end, here we losing the faith of our future, we risk to become much more ego-centered and on a national and individual level. To break this cycle, we need a paradigm shift. We must rebuild trust, and that's actually the theme of our meeting. We have to rebuild trust. Trust in our future, trust in our capacity to overcome challenges, and most importantly, trust in each other. Trust is not just a feeling. Trust is a commitment to action, to belief, to hope. To achieve this, we must rediscover and embrace the narrative that has driven humanity since its inception, acting as trustees for a better future. This narrative isn't about short-term gains or individual successes. It is about stewardship, about preserving and enhancing our world for current and future generations. It is about understanding that our actions today have far-reaching consequences tomorrow. The concept of trust and trusteeship compels us to think beyond borders and beyond our lifetimes. It encourages collaboration over competition, sustainability over expediency, and empathy over apathy. As trustees of the future, we are responsible for advancing a world which is richer in possibilities, more equitable in opportunities, and more secure in its foundations. Moreover, as leaders in government, business, and society, we bear a particular responsibility to rebuild trust in how we assume our own role as trustees. The annual meeting
Staying with
of
shit.
the World Economic Forum is not a collective decision-making body, but its impact stems from the new insights gained through dialogue and interaction, and more importantly, from the commitments made by each participant to contribute more significantly in their respective areas of responsibility to solving our most pressing issues. The cornerstone of our program are actually our more than 100 initiatives. Those initiatives are embedded into work programs, bringing together governments, business, and civil society and the best experts.
Maybe that's part of the game. Just be boring as fuck so nobody actually pays attention.
Annual meeting, while the vibrant atmosphere surrounding our gathering is a testament to its global significance, it is essential that we focus on our mission, committed to improving the state of the world, by engaging into those action-oriented initiatives. The World Economic Forum is not just Davos, it's an engagement throughout the year. In conclusion, trust is a fundamental pillar of our social, economic, and political lives. It is vital for cooperation, social cohesion, and effectively functioning institutions. To rebuild trust, there is a fundamental need to embody trusteeship, which means to care for the greater good. Let's use this annual meeting to rebuild trust by exercising our trusteeship individually and collectively for safeguarding the future of humanity and nature. Thank you.
Sounds like a real nice guy. Well played. All right, well, here's a little bit of Trump in 2018. Let's see what he's got to say.
I believe that today we need to strike the right balance between the necessary rebuilding of national social contracts and at the same time strengthening our multilateral system to address critical issues such as trade, investment, terrorism, and migration. I'm aware that your strong leadership is open to misconceptions and biased interpretations. Therefore, it is so essential for us in the room to listen directly to you.
I'm here today to represent the interests of the American people. The world is witnessing the resurgence of a strong and prosperous America. I'm here to deliver a simple message. There has never been a better time to hire, to build, to invest, and to grow in the United States.
This was when he was at his highest. Look at the angel there. My man. He clothes like an angel. Man from above. You know he's God sent.
Regulation is stealth taxation. The U.S., like many other countries, unelected bureaucrats, and we have, believe me, we have them all over the place, and they've imposed crushing and anti-business and anti-worker regulations on our citizens with no vote, no legislative debate, and no real accountability. In America, those days are over. As president of the United States, I will always protect the interests of our country, our companies, and our workers. We are lifting self-imposed restrictions on energy production to provide affordable power to our citizens and businesses and to promote energy security for our friends all around the world. No country should be held hostage to a single provider of energy. America is roaring back, and now is the time to invest in the future of America.
You couldn't ask for a better president, man. Donald Trump, 2018. Then you got an old Javier, president of Argentina, the Trump of the South. That's going to be a long one, too. So let's do it. I didn't know he had 4 eyes.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Today, I'm here to tell you that the Western world is in danger. And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years we became a leading world power. And when we embraced collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having the discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, country, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress, we can see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at a graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated. Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system. But also, if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period. And throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic. Of course, with the
Personally like being an individual, not just a member of a group.
money of others, so they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes? Which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what is Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process. If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives, and the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries, ends up binding the hands of entrepreneurs and prevents them from offering better goods and services at a better price. So how come that academia, international organizations, economic theory and politics demonize an economic system that has not only lifted out of extreme poverty 90% of the world's population, but has continued to do this faster and faster, and this is morally superior and just. Thanks to free trade capitalism, it is to be seen that the world is now living its best moment. Never in all of mankind's or humanity's history has there been a time of more prosperity than today. This is true for all. The world of today has more freedom, is rich, is more peaceful and prosperous. And this is particularly true for countries that have more freedom and have economic freedom and respect the property rights of individuals, because countries that have more freedom are 12 times richer than those that are repressed, and the lowest decile in terms of distribution in free countries are better off than 90% of the population of repressed countries, and poverty is 25 times lower, and extreme poverty is 50 times lower. And citizens in free countries live 25% longer than citizens in repressed countries. Now, what is it that we mean when we talk about libertarianism? And let me quote the words of the greatest authority on freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lech Jr., who says that libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, in defense of the right to life, liberty and property. Its fundamental institutions being private property, markets free from state intervention, free competition, the division of labor, and social cooperation, as part of which success is achieved only by serving others with goods of better quality or at a better price. In other words, capitalists, successful business people are social benefactors who, far from appropriating the wealth of others, contribute to the general well-being. Ultimately, a successful entrepreneur is a hero. And this is the model that we are advocating for the Argentina of the future, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, of freedom, and of property. Now, if free enterprise capitalism and economic freedom have proven to be extraordinary instruments to end poverty in the world, and we are now at the best time in the history of humanity, it is worth asking why I say that the West is endangered. And I say this precisely because in those of our countries that should defend the values of the free market, private property, and the other institutions of libertarianism, sectors of the political and economic establishment, some due to mistakes in their theoretical framework and others due to a greed for power, are undermining the foundations of libertarianism, opening up the doors to socialism and potentially condemning us to poverty, misery and stagnation. It should never be forgotten that socialism is always and everywhere an impoverishing phenomenon that has failed in all countries where it's been tried out. It's been a failure economically, socially, culturally, and it also murdered over 100 million human beings. The essential problem in the West today is not just that we need to come to grips with those who, even after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the overwhelming empirical evidence continue to advocate for impoverishing socialism. But there's also our own leaders, thinkers, and academics who, relying on a misguided theoretical framework, undermine the fundamentals of the system that has given us the greatest expansion of wealth and prosperity in our history. The theoretical framework to which I refer is that of neoclassical economic theory, which designs a set of instruments that unwillingly, or without meaning to, ends up serving the intervention by the state, socialism, and social degradation. The problem with neoclassicals is that the model they fell in love with does not map reality, so they put down their mistakes to supposed market failures rather than reviewing the premises of the model. On the pretext of a supposed market failure, regulations are introduced which only create distortions in the price system, prevent economic calculus, and therefore also prevent saving, investment, and growth. This problem lies mainly in the fact that not even supposedly libertarian economists understand what the market is, because if they did understand, it would quickly be seen that it's impossible for there to be something along the lines of market failures. The market is not a mere graph describing a curve of supply and demand. The market is a mechanism of social cooperation where you voluntarily exchange ownership rights. Therefore, based on this definition, talking about a market failure is an oxymoron. There are no market failures. If transactions are voluntary, the only context in which there can be a market failure is if there is coercion. And the only one that is able to coerce generally is the state, which holds a monopoly on violence. Consequently, if someone considers that there is a market failure, I would suggest that they check to see if the state intervention involved. And if they find that that's not the case, I would suggest that they check again, because obviously there's a mistake. Market failures do not exist. An example of these so-called market failures described by the neoclassicals are the concentrated structures of the economy. However, without increasing returns to scale functions, whose counterpart are the concentrated structures of the economy, we couldn't possibly explain economic growth since the year 1800 until today. Isn't this interesting? Since the year 1800 onwards, with population multiplying by 8 or 9 times, per capita GDP grown by over 15 times. So there are growing returns, which took extreme poverty from 95% to 5%. However, the presence of growing returns...
You know, when somebody's not got their boot on your back, their boot on your neck, you know, you could really get somewhere in life.
Involves concentrated structures, what we would call a monopoly. How come then that something that has generated so much well-being for the neoclassical theory is a market failure? Neoclassical economists think outside of the box. When the model fails, you shouldn't get angry with reality, but rather with the model and change it. The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures. But in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure,
Inexorably successful.
As a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical demonstration that state intervention is harmful and the empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise, the solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of spiral of regulations until we're all poorer and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which are just as harmful to life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already provides for equality of the sexes. The cornerstone of our creed says that all humans are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, including life, freedom, and ownership. All that this radical feminism agenda has led to is greater state intervention to hinder the economic process, giving a job to bureaucrats who have not contributed anything to society. Examples, ministries of women or international organizations devoted to promoting this agenda. Another conflict presented by socialists is that of humans against nature, claiming that we human beings damage the planet, which should be protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. Unfortunately, these harmful ideas have taken a strong hold in our society.
Paralyzing your children through gender confusion.
Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, culture, universities, and also international organizations. The latter case is the most serious one, probably, because these are institutions that have enormous influence on political and economic decisions of the countries that make up the multilateral organizations. Fortunately, there's more and more of us who are daring to make our voices heard, because we see that if we don't truly and decisively fight against these ideas, the only possible fate is for us to have increasing levels of state regulation, socialism, poverty, and less freedom, and therefore will be having worse standards of living. The West has unfortunately already started to go along this path. I know to many it may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has turned to socialism, but it's only ridiculous if you only limit yourself to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which says that it's an economic system where the state owns the means of production. This definition, in my view, should be updated in the light of current circumstances. Today, states don't need to directly control the means of production to control every aspect of the lives of individuals.
Let's think about how many hotels and apartment complexes got taken over during COVID. I remember renting a place down in like Vancouver, Washington, Southwest Washington, in the apartment complex, and nobody had to pay rent during the whole COVID thing, and we paid our rent, but no eviction clause going on, so even if people didn't pay their rent, they wouldn't get evicted. So there was all these there was these sex traffickers in there, and they couldn't evict them, and they didn't pay their rent for months. There was there was these tweakers that were selling stolen cars out of the parking lot. They couldn't evict them because of COVID, and they weren't paying their rent for months either. Yeah, me and we were family people trying to do everything right because we wanted to buy a house, so we were paying our rent, but nobody else was. It's just such a scam, and the place was it was unlivable. It was unsafe, and you had to sleep with one eye open because they couldn't evict all the bullshit that was going on out of there. And sooner or later, I think the government stepped in and paid their rent. So the place ended up losing all the good tenants. They moved out, and they were forced to keep these other motherfuckers in. They were just destroying the place. And who stepped in and paid for it? The government. Just through fucking COVID grants. It was just all fucking bullshit.
With tools such as printing money, debt, subsidies, controlling the interest rate, price controls, and regulations to correct the so-called market failures, they can control the lives and fates of millions of individuals. This is how we come to the point where, by using different names or guises, a good deal of the generally accepted political offers in most Western countries are collectivist variants, whether they proclaim to be openly communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Democrat Christians, Christian Democrats, neo-Keynesians, progressive, populist, nationalists, or globalists. At bottom, there are no major differences. They all say that the state should steer all aspects of the lives of individuals. They all defend a model contrary to that one which led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We have come here today to invite the rest of the countries in the Western world to get back on the path of prosperity, economic freedom, limited government, and unlimited respect for private property are essential elements for economic growth. And
private property.
the impoverishment produced by collectivism is no fantasy, nor is it an inescapable fate. But it's a reality that we Argentines know very well. We have lived through this, we have been through this, because as I said earlier, ever since we decided to abandon the model of freedom that had made us rich, we have been caught up in a downward spiral, as part of which we are poorer and poorer day by day. So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be, or how much you may have in terms of natural resources, or how skilled your population may be, or educated, or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank, if measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty. Therefore, in concluding, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors. You're heroes. You're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
Yes, sir. I like that guy. Trump of the South, huh? South of the equator, the Ecuador. You know, I've seen a lot of pictures of him where he's just got his hair just all wacky and shit, you know, trying to, I don't know if he's trying to pull the Trump thing off or not, but that's the first time I actually really sat there and listened to him speak, and I see why people like him. We need a lot more people like that to start standing up. You know, this is our time. we've seen what happens when you go the other direction. So, World Economic Forum. Well, it kind of started out a little rough, but we ended it pretty good, I think. There, good guy to listen to. Till next time.